When emotions rise in a conversation, most people either shut down, explode, or lose track of what they're really trying to say. The truth is, the moment you give your emotions the steering wheel, you give away your control. Staying calm isn't about being cold or distant. It's about having the strength to guide the conversation instead of letting it guide you. Control begins before the words leave your mouth. It starts in your breath and your tone, the very first signals people pick up on before they even process what you are saying, because your delivery is louder than your message if you allow your emotions to run ahead of you. And this is why if your voice shakes, if your tone rises, if your pace rushes, you've already surrendered ground without realizing it. You've already given the other person the power to lead the direction of the conversation. And the truth is, the one who controls the rhythm controls the outcome. So when you feel the heat rise in your chest or that quickness in your breathing, that is not the time to push harder. That is the moment to slow it down, because silence is not weakness. Silence is your reset button. Silence is where you get your strength back. And most people are terrified of silence because they think it shows they don't have an answer. But the reality is, silence communicates calm, confidence, and clarity. It says, you are not afraid to let the moment settle. You are not afraid to let the tension hang in the air without rushing to fill it, because rushing is how mistakes get made. Words slip out. You don't mean, tone takes over that you didn't intend. And once they're out, you can't pull them back in. So control begins with choosing to breathe through the pause, because the pause is not empty. It's full of power. It's full of space for you to gather yourself. It's full of space for the other person to feel your steadiness. And it is amazing how quickly a heated exchange can shift when just one person decides not to match the chaos in front of them. When your voice stays grounded, when your breathing slows down, when your pace is deliberate, the other person feels it. Even if they don't acknowledge it, they may still be raising their volume. Their emotions may still be spilling over, but your steadiness becomes like a mirror. It reflects back what calm looks like, and over time it pulls them in that direction, because no one can stay shouting at someone who won't shout back. It feels unnatural. It feels off balance. And eventually the storm begins to weaken because it doesn't have anything to push against. And this is where control lives, not in overpowering someone with more words or stronger tones, but in refusing to hand over the reins of your emotions. Because if you let the heat of the moment decide your delivery, you will always regret what follows. But if you choose to slow down, to breathe, to let the silence carry weight, you will always leave that conversation knowing you didn't give your control away. And this isn't about pretending you don't feel anything. It's about recognizing that your emotions don't have to be your driver. They can ride in the car with you, but they don't belong behind the wheel. And the breath, the tone, the pause, those are your tools to make sure you're still steering, because you can't lead a conversation you've already lost control of. And leadership doesn't come from the loudest voice in the room. It comes from the calmest one, the one that doesn't rush to fill silence, the one that doesn't panic when tension rises, the one that understands control is not something you grab in the middle of chaos. It is something you protect before the chaos even starts. And it begins with the simple choice of how you breathe, how you pace, and how you let silence work for you instead of against you. Emotions are contagious, and the quickest way to lose control of a conversation is to catch what the other person is throwing at you without even realizing it. Because the moment someone raises their volume, sharpens their tone, or pushes their frustration onto you, your natural instinct is to mirror it back. It feels automatic. It feels like defending yourself. But in reality, what you're doing is giving them the lead. You're letting their emotions set the pace. And once you match it, you're no longer leading, you're following. And this is why control in emotional conversations is less about what you say and more about how you sound when you say it, because tone sets the emotional temperature faster than words ever can. And if your voice rises just to keep up with theirs, you've surrendered the calm that could have been your greatest advantage. When you keep your voice steady, when you refuse to let your tone be pulled into their storm, something powerful begins to happen. You stop feeding the fire and instead you start grounding the room. Because the truth is, people can't stay escalated forever if you won't escalate with them. They eventually have to come down, and your steadiness becomes a magnet that pulls them toward you, not immediately, not all at once, but little by little. They feel the mismatch between their intensity and your calm, and that mismatch is uncomfortable. It forces a reset. It makes them question why they're shouting when you aren't, why they're speeding up when you're slowing down, and that is how you quietly turn the direction of the conversation without raising a single extra word. This doesn't mean you have to be robotic or stripped of emotion. It means you choose to be anchored. You choose to be the one who won't hand over the remote control of your emotions just because someone else pressed play on theirs. And this kind of discipline doesn't happen by accident. It happens when you make a decision before the heat rises that you will not mirror chaos. You will not match volume. You will not let their emotional state dictate yours. And that discipline pays off in ways you don't see right away. Because while the other person is losing ground with every outburst, you are building it with every steady response. And the longer you keep your tone calm, the more influence you gain. Think about how contagious laughter is. One person laughs, and suddenly the whole room follows. Emotions spread just as quickly in conflict. One person raises their voice, and everyone feels the pull to rise with them. But the opposite is true as well. Calm spreads, control spreads. When you stay grounded, you give the other person a place to land. And even if they don't show it in the moment, they will remember how they felt speaking with you. They will remember that their intensity didn't pull you under, and that memory will change how they approach you next time. And the reason this matters so much is because people rarely hear the words you say when emotions are high. They hear the tone, they feel the energy. And if your energy matches their chaos, then the conversation turns into a competition of who can outshout the other. But if your tone holds steady, you're not competing, you're leading, you're showing that strength is not in volume, it's in control, not in reacting to every spike of emotion, but in staying calm enough that the spikes flatten out on their own. And in that calm, you create space for real clarity to surface, because clarity can't exist in chaos, but it thrives where control is protected. Staying in control doesn't mean ignoring how you feel. It means being able to recognize it, name it, and place it where it belongs, so it doesn't own you, because emotions are powerful, but they're also slippery. And if you don't take hold of them first, they will take hold of you. The difference between saying, I feel frustrated, and saying, you frustrate me, is the difference between taking responsibility for your emotion and handing that responsibility to someone else. And the moment you hand it over, you give them the power to decide how you feel, which is the fastest way to lose control in any conversation. When you say, I feel, you are keeping the emotion on your side of the table. You are acknowledging it. You are being honest without making it an attack. But when you say, you make me angry, or you always upset me, you're no longer describing your feelings. You're throwing blame. And blame always invites defense. It always escalates instead of de-escalating. Naming your emotions is not weakness, it's clarity, and clarity is control. When you can clearly say, I feel disappointed, I feel overlooked, I feel hurt, you are not pretending those emotions don't exist. You're making sure they don't hijack your delivery. You're separating yourself from the heat long enough to describe it. And that separation is everything. Because when you put words to a feeling, you shrink it down to a size you can manage. It's no longer just energy running wild in your body. It's language you can handle, and the other person is far more likely to hear you when you express it this way, because you're not accusing them, you're not cornering them, you're giving them an opening to understand instead of a reason to fight back. The mistake so many people make in emotional conversations is thinking that control means bottling it up, pushing it down, or acting like nothing bothers them, but that's not control, that's avoidance, And avoidance always backfires because suppressed emotions leak out in your tone, in your body language, in the sharpness of your words. You think you're hiding it, but the other person feels it anyway. And because it's not clear, it comes across as passive aggression, sarcasm, coldness, or detachment, and none of that helps you stay in control. Real control Mez from honesty paired with restraint. It comes from being able to say, this is what I feel without saying, and it's your fault. It's about claiming your feelings as yours and then choosing how you want to respond. It's also important to remember that emotions are signals. They're not problems. They're telling you something about what matters to you. Frustration might be telling you your boundary was crossed. Sadness might be telling you you've lost something important. Anger might be telling you you felt disrespected. And when you listen to those signals and label them clearly, you're not being ruled by them. You're using them as information to guide your response. But when you skip the naming step and just react, the signal gets buried under the chaos, and you end up saying things that don't reflect what you actually feel, which creates confusion instead of clarity, distance instead of connection, and regret instead of resolution. Naming your emotions also sets the tone for the other person, because when you show that you can be open about your feelings without throwing blame, you make it safer for them to do the same, and this shifts the dynamic of the whole conversation. What could have spiraled into attack and defense can now move toward honesty and understanding, because you've shown that feelings don't have to be weapons. They can be bridges, but that only happens when you own them instead of outsourcing them, when you say I feel instead of you make me, when you choose description over accusation, when you treat emotions as guides, not as drivers. And when you remind yourself that control doesn't come from denying your feelings, but from naming them and keeping them in their proper place. Arguments escalate when we chase winning instead of clarity, because the moment the conversation turns into a scoreboard of who is right and who is wrong, both people start talking to defend themselves rather than to understand each other. And when you are defending, you are not listening. You are preparing your next move. You are sharpening your next point, and the goal quietly shifts from solving the problem to proving the other person wrong. And that is where control slips away, because winning feels good in the moment, but it rarely fixes anything. What it does is create more distance, more resentment, more unspoken tension. So the next conversation is even harder than the first. But when the goal is clarity, when your focus is on being understood instead of being declared the winner, the entire energy of the exchange changes. Clarity means you are aiming to express yourself in a way that cannot be twisted or mistaken. It means slowing down your words so the other person can actually hear them rather than react to them. It means asking questions instead of assuming you already know their intent, because most arguments are not about the issue itself, but about the story each person has attached to it, and those stories are rarely the same. And the louder the voices get, the less those stories are explored, and the less they're explored, the more the argument repeats itself over and over. But when you chase clarity, you are not running in circles. You are moving the conversation toward understanding. You are cutting through the noise. Control is found in the choice to prioritize being understood, because when you shift your focus there, your tone naturally softens, your body language relaxes, and your words carry more weight. Not because you forced them, but because you stopped trying to overpower. People may resist being proven wrong, but they rarely resist being understood. And when you offer that, you invite it in return, and suddenly the conversation is not a battlefield, but a table where both sides can set down what they're carrying. Clarity doesn't guarantee agreement, but it does guarantee progress, because you cannot work with confusion, but you can work with understanding. The strongest people in a heated conversation are the ones who do not need to win to feel strong, the ones who understand that strength is not in dominating, but in directing. And directing comes from clarity, when you state your perspective calmly, when you reflect back what you've heard from them, when you take the time to untangle the misunderstanding before pushing your point. You are not only holding your control, you are also showing what real influence looks like, because influence is not convincing someone to admit you are right. Influence is guiding them to see the truth without forcing it down their throat. And the truth does not need volume to be heard, it stands steady on its own. Chasing clarity also protects you from saying things you regret, because when the goal is winning, words are used like weapons, sharp, fast, designed to hit and hurt. But when the goal is clarity, words are chosen carefully, intentionally, designed to reveal, not to wound. And in the long run, those are the words that carry forward. Those are the words that stick. Because people rarely remember who won the argument, but they always remember how you made them feel in the middle of it. And if you made them feel cornered, attacked, or belittled, they may give you the victory in that moment, but you lose trust. And without trust, no conversation can ever truly move forward. This is why staying in control is not about out-talking the other person or overpowering them with a louder case. It's about guiding the conversation toward a place where both sides understand what is really being said, and sometimes that means asking calm questions when they expect sharp comebacks. Sometimes it means repeating your perspective with the same tone until it finally lands. Sometimes it means pausing instead of pushing, because clarity often grows in the space between words, not in the pile of them, and the one who can resist the urge to win at all costs is the one who ultimately gains the most control. Control is not about overpowering someone else. It's about keeping your own compass steady, because when conversations turn emotional, the temptation is always to push harder, speak louder, and try to force the other person into agreement. But that is not strength. That is insecurity dressed up as control. Real control is quiet, it's steady, it's grounded in the ability to hold your center when everything around you is trying to pull you off balance. And the truth is, the loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. The one who carries the real authority is the one who does not let the storm inside of someone else create a storm inside of them. Because when you stay calm, you are not only protecting your own peace, you are also influencing the entire direction of the conversation without even trying. Keeping your compass steady means you don't let emotions dictate your decisions in the moment. It means you know your values before you step into conflict. You know the boundaries you will not cross. You know the kind of communicator you want to be, and you hold to that standard, no matter how much pressure comes your way. Because if you let the other person's tone set your tone, if you let their words decide your words, then you are no longer steering, you are reacting. And reaction is the opposite of control. Reaction is surrender. But when you keep your compass steady, you are not chasing their mood. You are leading from your own. And people feel that difference immediately. It's easy to think that control means getting the last word or silencing the other person or proving that your logic is sharper than theirs, but all of those are illusions. Because even if you shut someone down with your words, if you lost your calm to do it, you've still lost control. And the measure of true control is not in how small you can make someone else feel, but in how grounded you can remain in your own skin. Because when the dust settles, what people remember is not the clever point you made. They remember the presence you carried. They remember whether you created chaos or calm, whether you added fuel or water, and your calm presence is what gives you influence long after the conversation ends. When emotions rise, you can almost feel the pull to abandon that compass. It feels easier in the moment to match fire with fire, to let your words fly unchecked, to let the frustration pour out. But that ease comes with a cost, and that cost is control. Because once the words are out, you can't take them back. And once your tone is raised, you can't pretend it wasn't. But when you pause, when you breathe, when you remind yourself that staying steady is more powerful than sounding strong, you protect yourself from that regret, and you remind the other person through your example that calm is possible even here, even now. And this is what makes calmness so powerful. It's not passive, it's not weak, it's active strength. It's choosing not to be pulled into the same emotional storm that is pulling at the other person. It's choosing to keep your compass pointed toward respect, toward clarity, toward truth, even when every part of the moment is begging you to let go of it. And the longer you practice this, the more natural it becomes. The more people around you begin to recognize that you are not easily shaken, that you don't give your control away just because the room gets tense, and that steadiness becomes part of your identity. Because control is not about being louder, sharper, or quicker. It's about never letting go of your compass, no matter how high the emotions rise